The whisper that stopped the world. The studio lights were dim, the air thick with that strange tension that only happens when two people share a secret they don't understand yet. Cameras had stopped rolling, crew members were packing up, but Keanu Reeves stayed sitting on the edge of the set. He was quiet, as always, his hands resting on his knees, his eyes lost somewhere beyond the shadows. That was when Scarlett Johansson walked over, calm, certain, and strangely fragile at the same time. No one noticed her crossing the empty space between them. She leaned close, so close that the world seemed to hold its breath, and whispered something into his ear. Whatever she said, it wasn't for anyone else, but it changed everything. For the first few seconds, Keanu didn't move. He just sat there, blinking slowly, like someone had just told him a truth he wasn't ready to believe. Then he turned his head slightly toward her, his voice barely audible. "What did you just say?" She looked at him, eyes soft but full of fire. "You know what I mean," she whispered again. "You felt it too." No one else on the set saw the exchange, but the few who lingered said they could feel something, like the air around them had shifted. Scarlett stepped back, gave a small nod, and left the studio without saying another word. Keanu didn't follow her. He just sat there for a long time, his fingers trembling slightly before finally standing up and walking out into the cold night. That night, something inside him broke open, not in a painful way. More like a door had been unlocked that had always been there, but he'd never dared to open. Keanu Reeves wasn't new to silence. He'd lived most of his life in it. Behind the fame, the interviews, the calm smile everyone admired, there was a quiet ache he carried like a scar no one could see. The loss of people he loved, the weight of kindness in a world that often felt cruel, he carried it all. But he never let it turn him bitter. That was his secret strength, gentleness. And that was exactly what Scarlett had seen in him. A kind of strength that could heal but also destroy, depending on how it was used. Her whisper wasn't about love, at least not in the way people imagine. It was about a decision, something that would test who they really were, as actors, as humans, as people who understood pain. The next day, Keanu found a note slipped under his hotel door. It was short, written in uneven handwriting. "Meet me at the old observatory at sunset. Come alone. Bring no questions, only honesty." There was no name, but he knew. Somehow he knew. As the sun began to sink behind the city, he drove out past the edge of Los Angeles, where the roads turned narrow and silent. The observatory sat on a hill, empty, cold, but glowing faintly in the dying light. When he reached the top, Scarlett was already there, standing by the railing, staring at the horizon. For a while, neither of them spoke. The only sounds were the wind and the faint hum of the city below. Finally, she turned to him and said quietly, "Do you ever wonder if we're playing the wrong roles? Not in films, in life." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. She smiled sadly. "I think you do. I can see it. You give so much of yourself to the world, but how much of you is left for you?" Keanu looked down, his jaw tightening. "Why are you asking me this?" "Because," she said, stepping closer, "you once told a young actor to never lose his kindness. That even when people break your heart, you should never let them take that away." "Do you still believe that?" His throat felt dry. "Yes," he said after a pause. "But sometimes it hurts to hold on to it." Scarlett nodded. "It's supposed to hurt." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, folded photo. It was worn and faded, a picture of a child smiling on a film set. She held it out to him. "Do you remember her?" Keanu took the photo and his breath caught. It was a child actress from a movie they'd both worked on years ago. She had disappeared shortly after, lost to something the industry refused to talk about. "Why are you showing me this?" he asked quietly. Scarlett looked away. "Because her brother found me last month. He said she used to talk about you, about how you told her that kindness could protect her, but it didn't. And now he wants us to help tell her story. For real, no scripts, no studios, just truth." He stared at the photo, feeling that familiar ache return, the kind that reminded him of everything he'd ever lost. "Why me?" he whispered. "Because," she said, her voice breaking just a little, You're the only one they'll listen to." That night, the world outside seemed to vanish. They sat on the stone steps of the observatory for hours, sharing stories they had both kept buried, about fame, loneliness, guilt, and the strange emptiness that comes with being adored by millions but truly known by no one. There were moments when Keanu laughed softly, and others when he just stared into the dark, silent tears glinting in the moonlight. Scarlett didn't try to comfort him. She just sat there, her shoulder brushing his, letting the silence speak. Finally, she said, "You once told me that every person you meet is fighting a battle you can't see. Maybe this is ours." Keanu looked at her, and for the first time that night he didn't feel alone. He nodded slowly. "Then let's fight it the right way." She smiled faintly. "We will, but you should know something first." "What's that?" Her voice dropped, barely above a whisper. "There's someone else involved, and you're not going to like who it is." Keanu frowned. "Who?" Scarlett hesitated, her eyes darkening. "The man who made the movie where she disappeared. The one who promised to protect her." Keanu's chest tightened. "You mean—" She nodded. "Yes, him." The wind picked up, carrying the sound of distant thunder. In that moment, Keanu understood that this wasn't just about a lost child or a forgotten story. It was about something deeper. The truth behind the smiles, the deals, the lights that burned too bright. And as the first drops of rain began to fall, Scarlett looked at him one last time and said softly, "If you decide to do this, there's no going back." Keanu took a long breath, feeling the weight of her words settle into his bones. He didn't answer. Not yet. He just looked out at the darkening city where the lights flickered like fragile stars and whispered to himself, "Maybe it's time." But Scarlett wasn't smiling anymore. She was staring past him, at something or someone, standing in the shadows near the old gate. The man in the shadows. The air around the observatory grew colder, heavy with the scent of rain and silence. Scarlett's eyes didn't move. She was staring past Keanu, her face suddenly pale, her voice caught somewhere between fear and disbelief. Keanu followed her gaze slowly, his instincts sharp, the way they always were when something felt wrong. Near the rusted gate at the edge of the hill stood a man in a dark coat, motionless, half hidden by the mist. His face was shadowed, but there was something about the way he stood, too calm, too certain, that made Keanu's pulse quicken. The man didn't move closer, didn't speak. He just waited, as if he knew they would eventually come to him. "Who is that?" Keanu asked quietly. Scarlett swallowed hard. "He's the reason I called you here." Keanu turned sharply toward her. "You knew he'd be here?" "I hoped he wouldn't," she whispered. "But he always finds a way." Before Keanu could ask more, the man stepped forward, the dim light revealing a familiar face, older now, lined by time, but unmistakable. He was a director, one Keanu had worked with long ago, a man whose name had vanished from Hollywood years earlier after a scandal that no one dared to speak about openly. Keanu's jaw tightened. "You." The man smiled faintly, like someone remembering an old joke. "Hello, Keanu. It's been a while." Scarlett took a step forward. "What are you doing here?" "The same thing you are," the man said calmly. "Looking for the truth." Keanu shook his head. "You don't get to say that." "Not after what happened." The man sighed, his voice low. "You think you know what happened, but you don't. Not yet." The wind pushed through the broken trees, scattering dry leaves across the ground. Scarlett folded her arms, trying to hold back the anger in her voice. "You destroyed her life. You used her. And now you show up pretending you care?" The man's eyes flickered with something unreadable. Guilt, maybe, or sorrow. "I didn't hurt her," he said quietly. "But I know who did." Keanu stared at him, searching his face for any sign of truth. "Then why didn't you say something back then?" "Because I tried," the man said. And no one listened. They buried it, paid people off, silenced everyone who asked questions. By the time I realized how deep it went, it was too late. Scarlett's voice trembled. "Too late for her," he nodded. "Yes, and maybe too late for me." Keanu took a step forward, his expression hard. "If you're lying—" "I'm not," the man interrupted. "You have no reason to trust me. I know that. But you need to understand something. What happened to her wasn't an accident. It was planned. And the people behind it still have power. They're still working, still smiling for cameras, still pretending to care. Scarlett's breath caught. Who? The man hesitated, glancing around the empty hill. Not here. It's not safe. Keanu didn't believe in paranoia. He believed in patterns, in things that didn't make sense until you looked closely. And the look in the man's eyes told him this wasn't some cheap story for sympathy. There was fear there. Real fear. You need to show us proof, Keanu said firmly. I will, the man replied. But first you have to decide if you're ready. Once you see it, you can't go back to pretending you don't know. Scarlett looked at Keanu, her voice quiet but steady. We already decided, the man nodded. Then meet me tomorrow night. Pier 31 after midnight. No phones, no press, just you two. Then he turned and walked into the fog, disappearing as suddenly as he had appeared. For a moment, the only sound was the wind and the soft crack of thunder in the distance. Keanu stood there, silent, the tension in his chest tightening like a knot. Scarlett spoke first. You think we can trust him? No, Keanu said. But we don't have a choice. The next day felt longer than it should have. Keanu tried to go about his routine, but everything felt hollow. People talked to him, asked questions, laughed, but it all sounded distant. His mind kept replaying Scarlett's words, the child's photo, the man's face, the whisper that started it all. When night came, he drove to the pier alone. The city was asleep, the water dark and restless under the pale glow of streetlights. Scarlett was already there, standing near the end of the dock, her coat pulled tight against the wind. You came, she said softly. You sound surprised. I wasn't sure you would. Keanu glanced at the water. I wasn't sure either. They waited in silence for what felt like hours, the cold sinking into their bones. Then a car approached, headlights cutting through the fog. The same man stepped out holding a small briefcase. You brought it? Keanu asked. The man nodded. Everything. He placed the briefcase on a wooden bench, opened it, and pulled out a stack of old tapes, photos, and letters. Some were labeled with film project names, others with dates and initials, the kind of things that should have been locked away forever. Scarlett picked up one of the photos. It showed the missing girl, smiling beside the man who now stood before them. This was taken 2 days before she disappeared, Scarlett whispered. The man's voice trembled. And that's why I can't sleep, because I know what happened the night after. Keanu stared at him. Then tell us. The man took a deep breath. She found something she wasn't supposed to, something that could have ruined people who owned half the studios in this city. They made her disappear. I was warned to stay silent or lose everything. Scarlett's hand shook. And you did? He looked at her with tired eyes. I was a coward. I thought if I stayed quiet it would end, but it didn't. It never does. Suddenly a noise echoed behind them, the sharp crunch of footsteps on wet wood. Keanu turned, his muscles tensing. Shadows moved near the entrance of the pier. Too many of them. The man froze. They followed me. Scarlett's eyes widened. Who? Them, he whispered. The ones I told you about. Before anyone could react, the sound of an engine roared behind the fog, black cars pulling up fast. Headlights cut across the pier, blinding them for a second. Keanu grabbed Scarlett's arm and pulled her behind a crate as doors slammed and voices shouted orders. The man with the briefcase looked terrified. Take it! He shouted, shoving the tapes toward Keanu. If they find me, don't stop running! But before Keanu could reach him, a single sound shattered the night, the echo of a gunshot. The man fell backward, his hand still gripping the briefcase. Scarlett screamed, the sound swallowed by the wind. Keanu's instincts kicked in. He grabbed the case, pulled Scarlett up, and ran toward the end of the pier. Behind them, footsteps thundered, voices yelling. Another shot cracked the air. A bullet splintered the wood inches from his foot. He didn't stop. Not until they reached the end of the dock, where a narrow staircase led down to the water. Jump, he said. Scarlett hesitated. What? Just jump. They plunged into the freezing water as the headlights above flickered like angry eyes. Keanu held the briefcase tight with one hand and Scarlett's wrist with the other. The water swallowed them, cold and endless. Above, the sound of shouting grew faint. Below, everything was silent. They swam until their lungs burned, until the pier was nothing but a shadow behind them. When they finally reached the shore, soaked and shaking, Scarlett collapsed onto the sand, coughing. Keanu dropped beside her, clutching the briefcase to his chest. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Scarlett whispered, "He's dead, isn't he?" Keanu nodded slowly. "Yeah, they killed him. And now they'll come for us." Scarlett looked at him, eyes full of fear and determination. "Then we don't stop running." Keanu stared at the horizon, where the faint light of dawn began to break through the clouds. The world felt different now, heavier, sharper, more dangerous. He opened the briefcase, his hands trembling. Inside, among the wet papers and old tapes, was a single envelope marked with one name, his own. Scarlett leaned closer. "What's that?" Keanu's voice was barely a whisper. "It's addressed to me." He opened it carefully. Inside was a photo, not of the girl, not of Scarlett, but of himself, taken years ago. And behind it, a single handwritten line. "You were never supposed to find this." Keanu's stomach turned cold. And then, at the bottom of the envelope, a second note slipped out, smaller, smudged, written in the same hand. "She's still alive." Whispers of the unseen, the note trembled in Keanu's hand. The words smudged, but clear enough to ignite a storm inside him. "She's still alive." The thought pulsed through his mind like an electric current, making every nerve ache with hope and dread. Scarlett sat beside him on the wet sand, shivering, her hair plastered to her face, her eyes wide and searching his. "Alive?" she whispered, voice barely audible over the distant waves. "You mean after all these years?" "Yes," Keanu said, cutting her off softly. "But it's not going to be easy. Whoever sent this, they knew we'd find the briefcase. They want us to follow a path. They're controlling this." Scarlett shook her head. "I thought we were following him." "The director. He was just the beginning," Keanu said. He tightened his grip on the briefcase. "The real players are still out there. And now, we're in their game." The first rays of sunlight bled across the horizon, reflecting off the water and casting long shadows that made the world feel unreal. They couldn't stay on the beach. Someone would come looking for them. People who didn't care who got hurt. Scarlett stood, brushing sand from her clothes. "Then what do we do?" "We disappear," Keanu said. "For now, underground. Nowhere they can track us. We need answers before they find us." The next few hours were a blur. They rented an old car with cash, drove through back roads and forgotten alleys, and finally ended up in a city on the outskirts of Los Angeles, a place where the air smelled of rust and old smoke. Keanu had known it from long ago, a place where few asked questions, where the world moved slower, and where secrets could hide. They found an abandoned warehouse at the edge of town, empty except for a few broken crates and scattered papers. Keanu picked a corner near the windows and set down the briefcase, opening it carefully. The tapes were damp, the photographs smeared, but the letters were mostly intact. "Look at this," he said, pulling out a folded letter, its edges yellowed and brittle. It was addressed to the missing girl, written years ago. "She was warned," he said. "Someone tried to protect her, but they failed. And now, whoever is behind this is trying to finish what they started." Scarlett ran her fingers over the words, tracing the lines like they might whisper their meaning to her. "Why show us this now? Why send the note after all these years?" "Because," Keanu said, voice low, "they want us to go after her. They think we can find her. Maybe they're right. Maybe we're the only ones who can." Hours passed, and as the sun climbed high into the sky, they went through every photograph, every tape, every piece of paper. The pattern slowly began to emerge. The girl had been moved from place to place, hidden behind layers of false identities. She had survived because someone somewhere had risked everything to protect her. "Look at this," Scarlett said, holding a photograph of a city street. "This isn't Los Angeles." Keanu leaned over, examining it closely. "Tokyo," he said after a moment. "I've been there once. I remember the street." "Then we go there," Scarlett said immediately. "We have to." "She's alive, Keanu." We can't stop now. He hesitated. Going overseas meant exposure, danger multiplied, and enemies unknown. But deep inside, he felt a pull stronger than fear. The whisper of hope for a life that had been stolen from the world, and from her, was louder than anything else. "You're right," he said finally. "We go, but we have to be careful. This is bigger than us." They spent the evening planning, tracing the clues from the photographs and letters, cross-referencing dates and locations. Keanu felt the familiar ache in his chest, the one he had learned to carry silently. But it was different now. It was hope, heavy and raw, mixed with fear. Scarlett watched him quietly, sensing the burden he carried, but also the determination that had always defined him. As night fell, they lay low in the warehouse. The city outside was alive with its usual hum, but inside the silence was deafening. Scarlett turned to Keanu. "Do you think she remembers him?" "Who?" "The director. The one who was supposed to protect her." Keanu's eyes darkened. "I don't know. Maybe. But whoever kept her safe also kept her away from him. That's why she's alive." Scarlett nodded slowly, biting her lip. "Then we're the next step. We have to bring her back safely. But it feels impossible." Keanu reached for her hand. "Impossible doesn't exist. Not for people who refuse to give up." They left the warehouse before dawn, careful to avoid surveillance and populated streets. The flight to Tokyo was long, and sleep came fitfully. Both were haunted by the image of the man at the pier, by the bullet, and by the smudged note that promised life where there should have been death. When they arrived, the city was a blur of neon lights and crowded streets, foreign and exhilarating. Every face seemed a potential threat, every corner a hiding place. Yet among the millions, Keanu felt the pull toward a single point. Somewhere, someone waited. Someone had survived against odds no one could imagine. That night, Scarlett and Keanu met with a contact, a man who had once worked in the shadows of the film industry, someone Scarlett had trusted years ago. He had information, and when he spoke, his words made the blood in Keanu's veins run cold. "She's not just alive," he said, voice low and urgent. "She's been moving, hiding, and she's not alone. Whoever protected her left signs for you, but you're not the only ones looking." Keanu's eyes narrowed. "Who else?" The man hesitated, looking around as if the walls themselves might be listening. "The ones who took her in the first place. They never stopped. They've been watching, waiting, and now they know you're here." Scarlett's hand gripped Keanu's arm. "Then we have to be faster. Before they find her again." Keanu swallowed, the weight of the truth pressing down. "And before they take us too." The streets of Tokyo stretched endlessly before them, glittering and alien, hiding danger and hope in equal measure. Somewhere in the heart of the city, the girl they had thought lost for years was alive, and they were the only ones who could reach her. But as they stepped into the crowded subway station, the first shadow fell across their path. A man with a face they didn't recognize, but a presence that screamed familiarity, danger, and inevitability. He smiled, just barely. "I've been expecting you." And in that moment, Keanu realized the fight was far from over. It had only just begun. The shadows game, the subway station, was alive with noise, a chaotic pulse of footsteps, announcements, and the hum of fluorescent lights. Keanu and Scarlett froze as the man stepped closer, his face partially hidden under a hood. He moved with a strange confidence, a predator who knew the terrain and the prey alike. "You've been following breadcrumbs," he said softly, his voice echoing slightly off the tiled walls. "Thinking you could find her before us. Thinking you could protect her without consequences." Keanu's hand instinctively went to the briefcase. "Who are you?" The man smiled, a cold, calculated smile. "Someone who has watched everything. Someone who knows the truth you're desperate to uncover. And someone who will stop at nothing to make sure the story ends the way it was always meant to." Scarlett stepped forward, her eyes sharp. "The girl. You've been watching her too?" He nodded slowly. "Of course. She's alive, but she's fragile. And she trusts no one, not even you." Keanu's chest tightened. "Then why are you telling us this?" "Because," he said, lowering his voice to a whisper, If you touch her the wrong way, you'll ruin her forever. You've already stepped into a game you don't understand, and if you want to survive, you'll follow my rules." He turned, walking smoothly into the crowd. Without waiting, Keanu and Scarlett followed, weaving through the throngs of commuters, their senses heightened. Every face could be a spy, every shadow a trap. "What do we do?" Scarlett asked, her voice tense. "We play along," Keanu said. "For now. We need information before we make a move." They followed the man for blocks, through narrow alleyways lit by flickering neon signs, past shuttered shops and steaming vents. Finally, he stopped in front of an old building, its facade cracked and peeling. He motioned for them to enter. Inside, the air was heavy, thick with dust and the scent of old paper. The walls were lined with filing cabinets, photographs pinned to corkboards, and maps covered in notes and strings connecting names and dates. It was a labyrinth of a lifetime of secrets. He turned to them. "Everything you think you know about her protector, about the director, about the people behind her disappearance. It's only half the story. The other half is here. And if you want to save her, you need to understand it all." Keanu approached a large corkboard covered in photographs. One of the images made his heart stop. It was the girl, but not as a child. She was older, cautious, wary, and aware, hiding in plain sight, her eyes sharp and searching. Scarlett gasped. She's not just surviving. She's fighting back." "Yes," the man said, "and that's why they're terrified. She has information that could destroy powerful people, and she's smart enough to hide it. That's why she's still alive. But she's alone, and she doesn't know who to trust." Keanu clenched his fists. "Then we find her first. No matter what it takes." The man's eyes narrowed. "Be careful. There are more than just the ones you've faced. There are those who will kill without hesitation, and they're already looking for you." Scarlett's lips trembled. "Then we move tonight." "We can't wait." The man handed them a small envelope, no larger than a postcard. Inside were instructions, cryptic directions, locations, and a map. Keanu studied it carefully. "She's moving," staying one step ahead. "Whoever hid her, protected her, made sure the trail is confusing. This isn't just luck." "Then we need to be smarter," Scarlett said. "Faster," Keanu nodded. "And we can't trust anyone else. Not until we see her ourselves." As they stepped out into the night, the streets of Tokyo felt different. Every shadow seemed deeper, every corner darker, every stranger a potential threat. The city had become a maze of danger and possibility, and somewhere inside it, the girl was waiting, unaware that two people from her past had come to rescue her. They moved quickly, avoiding the main roads, slipping into side streets where neon lights flickered and steam rose from manholes. They stopped only when necessary, checking the map, reading the cryptic notes, piecing together the route she had taken. "She's been leaving clues for us," Keanu said quietly, almost like she knew someone would come. "Someone who could help?" Scarlett's eyes widened. "Then she trusts us already." "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe she's testing us, making sure we're ready for what's coming." Hours passed. The night deepened. The streets grew quieter, emptier, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Keanu and Scarlett approached an abandoned apartment building at the edge of the river. The man had indicated this was the last place she had been seen. They moved carefully up the stairs, the floor creaking under their weight. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and rust. Keanu held the briefcase tight against his chest. Scarlett's hand rested on the grip of a small flashlight, her eyes scanning every shadow, and then they heard it, a soft voice, almost a whisper, coming from the apartment at the end of the hall. Keanu froze. Scarlett froze. The voice called a name, not their names, but someone familiar to the girl, someone from her past. "It's her," Scarlett whispered. "Yes," Keanu said, his heart pounding. "And she's not alone." They crept forward, the sound of breathing, soft and uneven, guiding them. The door was slightly ajar, and inside, the dim light revealed a figure they had not expected. The girl, alive, older, cautious, but clearly aware of the danger. Behind her, a man, someone entirely unexpected, someone who had been thought gone, someone who had connections to the people who had tried to destroy her. Scarlett's hand went to her mouth. "He's alive too?" Keanu's jaw tightened. "And he's not here to help." The girl turned, her eyes locking on Keanu and Scarlett. She did not smile. She did not speak. She just watched them, measuring, calculating, waiting for them to prove themselves worthy of her trust. The man behind her stepped closer, a smile playing at his lips, one of control, confidence, and danger. "Welcome," he said softly, "to the real game." And in that moment, Keanu realized that the path to saving her would not just be about courage, but about strategy, deception, and sacrifice. The Shadow's game had begun. The edge of trust. The apartment was silent, thick with tension. Keanu and Scarlett stood at the threshold, eyes fixed on the girl and the man behind her. The girl's gaze was sharp, alert, a mixture of fear, suspicion, and something Keanu couldn't name. A spark of defiance that had survived years of danger. The man behind her smiled, a slow, chilling smile. "You don't understand," he said softly, voice calm but deadly. "Everything you thought you knew about her, about me, about this city, it was a lie. Every move you've made has been watched, and now, finally, you've stepped into the center of the truth." Scarlett's voice shook. "Then tell us. Who are you? What do you want?" He shook his head. "I don't tell, I test. You want to save her? Prove you can. Every second you hesitate, every doubt you carry, costs her. And if you fail," his smile widened, "you'll lose more than her. You'll lose yourselves." Keanu's hand tightened on the briefcase. He glanced at Scarlett. She nodded slightly. They were in this together no matter what came next. The girl finally spoke, her voice steady but soft, carrying the weight of years she had carried alone. "Why are you here? Why now? You could have come before, but you didn't." Keanu took a step forward, keeping his tone calm. "We didn't know how. We didn't have the pieces. Now we do, and we're here to help you. To get you out of this, wherever it's safe." The girl's eyes flickered, uncertain. She glanced at the man behind her. He stepped closer, his presence a wall of threat. "They don't trust you," he said to her. "I don't trust you. Prove that you're ready or walk away. The choice is yours." Scarlett stepped beside Keanu. "We don't need trust yet. We need action. We've come this far. We won't stop now." The man moved to a side table and pushed a small metal case toward the girl. Inside were files, photographs, and letters, all evidence of the people who had hunted her, who had tried to erase her existence. She picked one up, eyes scanning rapidly. Keanu watched her face carefully. He could see the anger, the fear, the confusion. He understood now that her trust had been broken too many times to be given easily. But he also saw the fire. The will to fight, to survive. Scarlett whispered. "She's ready to move." "We have to act before they change their mind," Keanu nodded. "But we need a plan. One mistake and they'll take her again." They moved carefully through the apartment, gathering the evidence. Keanu noticed small details, hidden cameras, a laptop wired to the building's network, signs of recent surveillance. The man behind her didn't interfere, just watched, as if to see how far they would go, how much they could handle. Suddenly, the girl turned toward him. "You were in the photographs?" she said. "You were the one who told me to be kind, even when no one else cared. Why did you leave me?" Keanu's heart clenched. "I never left. I just didn't know where to find you. Not until now." Her eyes softened for a fraction of a second, then hardened again. "Words are cheap. Actions prove everything." Scarlett stepped closer. "Then let's act, now." The man's phone rang suddenly, sharp and loud in the quiet apartment. He answered, speaking in hushed tones, but his face darkened as he listened. When he hung up, his gaze snapped to them. "They're coming. They know you're here. Get ready. There's no more time." Keanu turned to the girl. "We move now. Follow me." The girl hesitated, fear flashing in her eyes. But then she nodded. She grabbed the files, clutching them like a lifeline. As they stepped into the hallway, chaos erupted. Footsteps, voices, and shouting filled the building. People had arrived, hired men, shadows of the ones who had tried to erase her, now closing in. Scarlett hissed, "We have to split up." Keanu shook his head. No. Together. We stick together or we fail. They moved quickly, taking narrow staircases, slipping into maintenance corridors. Every step was measured, every sound amplified in the tense silence. The city outside seemed distant. The world shrunk to the three of them running for survival. They reached a rooftop at the top of the building, the neon lights of Tokyo glowing below like a river of fire and electricity. Keanu and Scarlett paused, catching their breath. The girl leaned against the wall, trembling, clutching the files. "We're almost out," Keanu whispered. "Just a few more steps." Suddenly, the man appeared at the edge of the rooftop, the same cold smile on his face. "You can't escape," he said. "Not yet. Not until you prove yourselves." Keanu stepped forward, blocking the girl's view. "We don't need to prove anything to you." The man tilted his head. "You will, or you'll regret it." Before anyone could react, a helicopter's spotlight cut through the night sky, illuminating the rooftop. Shadows moved around the edges. More men, more danger, all converging. Keanu's heart raced, every instinct screaming. Scarlett grabbed his arm. "What now?" Keanu looked at the girl, who met his eyes with a fierce intensity. "We jump," he said simply. "Together. Trust me." The girl's breath caught, but she nodded. They ran toward the edge, the helicopter blades slicing the air above them, the city lights blinding and surreal, and then, at the last moment, the man on the rooftop lunged toward them, a knife glinting in the light. Keanu caught his wrist, the metal scraping, sparks of panic and fury lighting the moment. Scarlett screamed, the girl screamed, the city seemed to hold its breath. And then they leapt. The fall was terrifying. The wind ripping at them, the city rushing up to meet them. Keanu held the girl, Scarlett gripping his arm, hearts pounding in unison, every second stretching into eternity. Below, the river awaited, dark, cold, merciless. They hit the water hard, swallowed by its icy embrace. The current grabbed them, tossing them violently. Keanu kicked, holding the girl close, pulling Scarlett beside them. The files floated, the briefcase nearly lost. But they clung to each other, fighting against the force of the river. When they finally reached the edge, exhausted and shivering, they lay on the wet stones, gasping, hearts racing, bodies trembling. The city above them was alive but distant. They had survived for now. Scarlett looked at Keanu, voice hoarse. "We made it." He shook his head, eyes dark. "We survived this, yes, but they're not done. Not by far, and now. They know she's awake. They know she's aware." The girl looked up at him, fear and determination in her eyes. "Then we fight, right?" Keanu nodded. "Yes, but it's only going to get worse. The edge of trust is where survival begins. And in the distance, atop the skyline, a figure watched them silently. The shadow they had not yet seen, waiting, calculating, smiling. The truth that binds, the city lay beneath them, silent and sprawling, as Keanu, Scarlett, and the girl huddled behind a cluster of crates near the riverbank. Their breaths came in short, ragged gasps, their bodies soaked and trembling from the jump. The files were still clutched tightly, the briefcase miraculously intact. But the helicopter and the rooftop attackers had vanished into the night. Keanu looked at the girl, studying her face, fierce, wary, but alive. "We need to move," he whispered. "They're not gone. They're just waiting for us to make a mistake." Scarlett nodded. "We can't go back. We have to confront this head-on." The girl glanced at him. "And the man on the rooftop?" Keanu shook his head. "He's a piece of a much larger puzzle, but we'll face him when the time comes. Right now, we need to understand who protected you all these years, and why." They moved quickly through narrow alleys and side streets, avoiding main roads. Keanu carried the briefcase. Scarlett guided the girl, and the girl herself moved silently, almost instinctively, aware of danger at every turn. The city seemed alive with unseen eyes, shadows twisting in every corner. Finally, they reached a hidden apartment, far from the heart of Tokyo. Inside, the room was sparse but organized. A man stepped out from the shadows. He was older, with tired eyes and hands calloused from years of work. He looked at the girl and smiled. The first warmth in a long time. "You're safe here." he said softly. And you've done well. The girl froze, recognition flooding her eyes. You were the one protecting me? He nodded. I stayed in the shadows, watched over you, made sure you survived. Everything you endured, I could not stop. But I could give you a chance to live. Keanu's jaw tightened. Then why hide? Why not come forward sooner? The man looked at him, eyes heavy with truth. Because the people behind her disappearance are powerful. If I revealed myself, they would have found her. They would have ended it all. Hiding was the only way to keep her alive. Scarlett stepped closer, voice gentle but firm. And the director? The man who sent the briefcase? The man sighed. He was part of the puzzle. He wanted redemption, wanted to set things right. That's why he helped you. But he underestimated the danger. He paid the price for it. The girl's eyes filled with tears. All these years, I thought I was alone. I thought no one cared. Keanu knelt beside her, voice steady. You weren't, and now you're not. We're here, and we're not leaving. But there was no time for relief. The man in the shadows spoke again. They found us. They know the girl is awake. Their reach is long, their methods ruthless. You need to leave the city immediately. Go somewhere they cannot follow. Scarlett looked at Keanu. Then we take her out of here, far away, and we make sure they can't touch her again. The girl nodded. I trust you. But I need to know, why me? Why did they choose me? Keanu and Scarlett exchanged a glance. Keanu took a deep breath. Because you knew something you weren't supposed to. Because someone powerful wanted to erase everything you represented. But you survived. Because of courage. And because of kindness. Those are the strongest weapons anyone can have. Her eyes widened. Kindness? Scarlett smiled softly. Yes. Kindness and resilience. You carried both through every impossible moment. That's why you're still here. They left the apartment under cover of darkness, moving quickly through hidden paths the man had taught them. The city, once dangerous and suffocating, became a maze of hope, every shadow a potential threat, but also every alley a chance for freedom. Finally, they reached a safe house far from the city, where the girl could rest, recover, and begin to reclaim her life. Keanu and Scarlett watched over her, keeping vigil through the long night, the weight of the journey pressing down, but lighter now with hope instead of despair. Scarlett whispered, We did it. She's safe. Keanu nodded, but his eyes were thoughtful. For now. But the world won't forgive. It won't forget. We have to be ready for whatever comes next. The girl, exhausted, finally smiled. A small, fragile smile, but genuine. Thank you, she whispered. For not giving up on me. For coming when no one else did. Keanu placed a hand gently on her shoulder. Sometimes the right thing isn't easy, but it's always worth it, Scarlett added, and kindness, courage, and trust, they will guide you. Always. Outside, the sun began to rise, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink. The city below remained unaware of the battles fought in the shadows, the lives saved, the sacrifices made. But inside the safe house, 3 hearts beat with the quiet certainty of survival, resilience, and hope. The girl looked at Keanu and Scarlett, determination in her eyes. Then let's make sure no one ever hurts anyone like this again. Keanu smiled faintly. We will. Together, Scarlett nodded. This is only the beginning. And somewhere, in the distance, the people who had tried to erase her watched from afar, powerless for now, as their plans unraveled. The shadows that once loomed so large had finally begun to fade. The journey had ended, for now, but the bonds forged in danger. The lessons of courage and the power of kindness would remain forever. And as the first light of day filled the room, Keanu, Scarlett, and the girl knew one truth. The past could not be erased, but the future could be rewritten.